We can begin this by opening a new blend file. I'll press A in the scene and press delete to remove these 3 objects. The model we are importing is an FBX file from my Udemy course, Architectural CAD Modeling and Rendering for Beginners. I have made some modifications, including removing any unnecessary faces to reduce the poly count, combining areas such as walls or windows by the floor that they are on. Otherwise, the model is how it was when the course finished. This house model will be going directly into Twinmotion, so setting up this file first to have a smooth transition between the 2 applications is important. This is the same for any game engine or digital content creator. The first thing we need to do is set up the scene units. In Twinmotion, 1 unit equals 1 centimeter, and in Blender, 1 unit equals 1 meter. To get the 2 to align, we can scale the Blender scene down first. In the Scene Properties tab, reduce the unit scale to 0.01. I also like to change the length to display millimeters. Now, once our model has a uniform scale, exporting and importing models between the 2 applications should be seamless. We can make changes to the model in Blender and overwrite previous versions, so re-importing to Twinmotion should be straightforward. I can press F4 for the file context menu and in import choose FBX. This FBX is available in the Asset section of my website, where it can be downloaded and you can follow along. From the Udemy course, the FBX is in the resource folder of the course. For YouTube users, the link is in the description. You will need Twinmotion to complete the tutorial. The model is called house.fbx, so we can click Import FBX. Once this imports and I zoom out, the model disappears. The reason for this is that the scene clipping needs to be updated. I can press N for the sidebar and come to the View tab. Because we have changed the scene scale, we also need to update the scene camera's clipping settings. If you zoom out any further than 10,000 millimeters, the scene camera will clip the view. In the end clip, I will put in 2km and press enter. That's a large enough value not to have any issues with the model. I'll first do a quick check on the model so I can select individual objects. In the Item tab, the roof object, for example, has some non-uniform transforms. These can cause issues within Twinmotion, so best have the location, rotation and scale at 0s and 1. Having the location zeroed out allows you to add each element to the scene at exactly the same location within Twinmotion as it is here in the Blender file. Zoom out so I can view all the model. I can press Z and choose wireframe shading. Change the selection type to select box up here. Drag a selection over all objects and press Ctrl+A and choose all transforms. This will clear out any ununiform transformations on all the selected objects. One quick change I do want to make on the model, and it's the garage entrance area. Select it and tab into edit mode. Press Z and switch to solid shading. Switch to edge selection with 2. Select the edge here, press Ctrl and select this edge to get the shortest distance between the 2. Ctrl+B and bevel this edge. Select this edge here and Ctrl click this edge. Press GY and just drag this edge back to form the slope of this entrance. Now that we have made changes to the mesh, the UVs need to be updated. Let's switch to the UV editing tab. We do need to update the clipping within this view. Increase this to 2km. Press the / key to isolate the object. Press A to select it all. To unwrap this section of mesh, I can press U and choose Smart UV Project. Increase the island margin to 0.02 so the islands have a little bit of distance between them and avoid any texture bleed. Also, for any automatically generated light maps based on these UVs, best to ensure no UV islands are overlapping. Uncheck stretch to UV bounds so any pattern won't get distorted, and click OK. If you make changes to other parts of the mesh, just make sure you update the UVs. Let's switch back to the Layout tab. Each of these objects has a material applied, and some have additional material slots depending on the amount of material an object requires. In most cases, the amount of material slots is minimum, but feel free to add extra. All internal floors, for example, all have the same material, so adding additional slots here would be useful. Let's look at an example of that. I can switch into a front orthographic view. I can switch into wireframe shading. I'll box select all objects above the first floor. Press H then to hide those. Switch back to solid shading. Select the first floor object and in the outliner, press the period key to double check it is in fact the first floor object. Switch to the material tab in the properties editor. I can tab into edit mode. In the material tab, the two materials assigned are m_floor.003 and m_floorexternal.001. I can deselect the mesh. Select m_floors external. Click the select button to show what material is assigned to this. Press 3 for face select. This will be a tiled area, but the remaining mesh can have more materials added. I can select these faces here. Add a new material slot and click New. Name it. And click the Assign button. I can repeat this for any other parts of this object or the whole house I'd like separated with other materials. I can repeat this for a few more faces on this object. So once you've added enough material slots, let's tab back to object mode and press Alt H to unhide those hidden objects. When we import this model into Twinmotion, we have a couple of options on how to add material to the mesh. I like to break it down by material. Once imported, material can be assigned to each part of the mesh based on the material we have added here in Blender. So this floor, for example, will be separated based on the material names. This will become more obvious once we import it into Twinmotion. So now this model is ready for export. We have UVs, a material for each part of the model, uniform transformations, and a scene scale that matches Twinmotion. I can switch to wireframe mode, drag a selection over all the objects that make up the house model. I can press F4 for the file context menu, and in the export menu choose FBX. I'll find a location for this model, give it a name, click on selected objects, and the remaining defaults look good. I can click Export FBX. Twinmotion is a real-time 3D immersive tool that produces a range of high-quality images and videos outputted quickly for VR or any medium you need. Twinmotion is a paid application but offers great value for money at its current price. Let's launch Twinmotion here. This opens up the welcome screen showing you the navigation controls available. In the drop-down, choose the configuration that works best for you. I can leave this set to Twinmotion. Take a screenshot of the controls, and this may help you get going faster if you're new to Twinmotion. You can enhance Twinmotion with direct links for different applications, such as ArchiCAD and Rhino, for example. This will allow one-click synchronization of your models and BIM information with Twinmotion. Hopefully the supported applications get expanded to include Blender someday. I can click the X and get into Twinmotion. This brings us into Twinmotion's default scene. In the eye icon here, you can choose the speed of your navigation. There are 3 settings here to choose from slow up to fast. You can also switch views from here. I usually leave this set to default, which is perspective. This setting here lets you choose the time of day or night. Down on the bottom of the screen we have different menus available that give you access to most features within Twinmotion. They are the import, context, settings, media, and export. We will be taking a look at some of these settings shortly. The other main part of the Twinmotion interface is of course the asset library, and that is hidden behind this little button here. In here you have access to materials and objects that can be easily dragged and dropped into the scene. Let's begin with the import setting here. Clicking this icon will open up the import options. We can click open up here to open the file browser. Navigate to where you have the model we exported from Blender saved. Select it and click open. Click the options drop down, and in the collapse setting I'll leave this set to collapse by material, and that will enable us to add materials into the material slots we added in Blender. The rest of the defaults are fine. Let's save the file, and I would advise to save often as you may experience crashes. I can choose a location, name it, and save. We now need to just navigate over in the scene to view the model. The first thing I like to do when I'm in here is to add materials to the model just to check that there are no issues with the mesh. We can come up and expand the library tab if it's not already open and click into the material folder. The first material I want to add is a brick material. In bricks I can choose this round bricks 02, drag this and drop it onto the model. Once this has been added to the model, the material properties become available down here. We can adjust the color, reflections, scale, and whether the weather is affecting it or not. We also have additional settings here to adjust the bump, glow, metallicness, whether it's two-sided, or if we want to switch X-ray mode on or off. We can use the breadcrumbs to step back to our first set of material properties. Here I need to reduce the scale of the brick texture. I can either click and drag the slider or click and type in a value. Here I can set this to 0.3. I'm just going to zoom in over here. I notice on the front of the wall here, the bricks are not aligning correctly. This is an issue with the UVs. To fix this, I can open back up Blender. Select the wall with the issue and switch to the UV editing tab here. I can isolate this object and switch to face select mode. First I can select all these faces that make up the side of the wall here. Now I just notice I can rotate these, so I'll just select all of this set of faces, press R180 to rotate them, just to have them sitting the correct way around. I can then select these three faces here and move them up and align them on the same level so the UVs match up. I can repeat that for the other side. When I'm finished, switch back to the Layout tab. We can switch to wireframe mode, drag a selection over all these objects and press F4 and choose export. I can navigate then to where I saved the original model we exported and select it, so it will be overwritten with the changes I've just made to the UVs. Check on selected objects and click Export FBX. Back in Twinmotion, let's come back to the Import tab to where my house model is listed. If I hover the mouse on this here, a little re-import button appears, and clicking this will re-import the model with the updated UVs. This can be repeated for any other part of the model that needs fixing. Let's now add that brick material to the other parts of the mesh. To use the same brick material with the modified scale, we can use the eyedropper tool here and select it. From here we can grab this material and add it to the other parts of the mesh that require it. I can go ahead and add material to more of the mesh using exactly the same method, and I can speed up this section a little bit. So I've kept the amount of materials I've used to a minimum, just trying to use a small selection of colors throughout the model. Let's take a look at decals and how we can use them to add a little bit more detail to the road here. Back in the material library, we can click into objects and decals. I can drag and drop in some line markings, leave them on the road for the moment. And also a sewer decal. Let's now position them. So from the View tab we can switch into Top View. From here I can move the yellow line to the side. I need to rotate the sewer decal. I can switch between rotate, move and scale with the 4, 5 and 6 key. I'll press 4 for rotate, hover the mouse on the rotation gizmo and type in 90 and press enter. Now position the decal. I can center up the white line also. I want to duplicate this line, select it and zoom out here. Switch to the Move tool and press Shift and click and drag the arrow. This brings up the copy option box. Here I can enter a distance between each line. So I'll add 4 for the spacing and 26 for the number. And click OK. That now instances this object. This may or may not be enough, but you can experiment with these numbers. So that's a few too many. Let's just select these and delete them. I can repeat this for the sewer object. I can give it a spacing of 12 and a number of 8. And also repeat this for the yellow lines. I now want to copy all the yellow lines and the sewer decal to the opposite side. In the scene graph, I can find the yellow lines. Select the first, then Shift select the last. Now in the scene, press Ctrl and select the first one created to add to that selection. With the Move tool on, press Shift and drag the arrow and position them. Click OK for the defaults of one copy and the distance I choose here. I can repeat that for the sewer objects. Let's put these objects into a folder just to tidy up the scene graph a little bit. So over in the scene graph, click the Options button here and choose the new container. I can call this Road Decals and press Enter. Now select the first row decal object. Scroll right down to the bottom and Shift select the last one and drag and drop these into that new container. Let's switch back to the perspective view. And also let's save the file. Let's add some models to the scene. From the library and in the vehicle folder, in cars I can grab a few of these and just add them into the scene. I can go ahead and add a few more models from the library simply by dragging and dropping. You can press the F key with an object selected to zoom right into that object. I can create a new container called Assets. and drag all of these assets into that container. Let's take a look at how to add in location mesh data. In the context menu, click into Urban. This loads in a map. You can choose any location on Earth. You can zoom out and choose that location. The default start location is Paris. So I'll just find a location that I want to grab. This box icon here, we can select it and position the map underneath. And you can zoom in and out to gather more or less of the geometry. I'll position this here at this distance and click grab. This will load in a mesh representation of that location. And we will need to zoom out at first to get a little perspective of what we've just imported. Let's also save this file. In the scene graph, the objects we imported are held within the context container here. If I select that in the scene, I can reposition this a little bit. You can select any of the objects you don't want and delete them. I'm going to make a little bit of room here for the house and some instances of that house. So I'm going to just go ahead and delete a few of these mesh objects. I can also move these trees out of the way here. Also, I'm going to move the entire context object around and rotate it to position it. I'm also going to select all of these trees here and delete them. In the scene graph, I can collapse all the folders. Then select the house model and Control-click the asset folder. Press Shift and drag the Move gizmo along the Y-axis. This brings up the copy options, and for the spacing 19.8. That's the width of the model including the walls. And for the number, I'll enter 10. I can select the road decals container and press Ctrl and select the road, and I'll just copy these also. I can go ahead and add some more models of trees and city objects from the library. I can go ahead now as well and add some people to the scene. Now I want to add some interior objects to the house. I'll just work through these folders and add in some interior objects. Once you have the assets in place, let's take a look at creating an animation. I'm going to begin this animation outside. So I'll position the camera over here first. Let's now come to the settings menu, and here you can change the camera settings. We can also do this from the video section, but just be aware you can access the camera settings here also. In the media menu, where we have the option for creating images and videos, let's click video, and in here we can click the plus to add a new video. This creates a keyframe at the start of the animation. Let's click the more button here and enter the settings menu and into camera. Here I can change the field of view for this section of video to 50. This gives the video a more cinematic look. The rest I can leave as default and click back to video 1. I can readjust the camera to get my opening shot. Any changes to the camera position can be updated by clicking the refresh button here. Now let's add a second position to this animation. We can either move the camera first and click the plus, or click the plus, then reposition the camera and click the update button. I'll move the camera first. Now click the plus to add the second keyframe. So now when I scrub back by left clicking and dragging the playhead, the animation plays back from the first position to the second. We can use the play button here to play this back also. Let's add a new part to this video. A new part will bring you straight into that new shot. I'll first find a new location for the first shot. Then click the new video part button here. Now move to another position and click the plus to add a second position. You can add multiple keyframes to each video, but for these I'm just adding 2. I can add another part again by finding the next start position. Then clicking the new part button here. Now reposition the camera and add a second keyframe. For this shot, I want to change the depth of field. So in the settings here and in camera, click on depth of field and click into more. I can use the depth of field selector to focus the camera. Now back in the video, I can click into the more settings of the second camera position and in depth of field, update this to focus on the computer screen. Come back to my video here and press play. When I'm happy with the video, I can export it. In the export menu, I can click the video option and select the only video available here. If you had multiple videos, you could export them all. It's also a good idea to name the videos as you create them. Now I can click export. That will ask me for a location and I can choose one, and that will render out the video. When that is finished, I'll open up the folder and just click the play button to play that video back. Okay, and that wraps up a brief look at Blender to Twinmotion and some of the great features available inside. There's much more to discover, and it's getting better and better all the time.